Hello, how are we all doing? We're going to set 9 now, which is amazing. I'm actually having some of the most fun I've had with the game in a long time. This weekend I was a little bit busy doing One Piece regionals. I went to the Manchester regionals and we had a fairly fun time. So I played that game a bit more for fun. But it was quite interesting to me to go away to play that game and still be really excited to come back to Lorcana. I think set 8 was, in my opinion, pretty good. I like some of the decks. I like some of the intriguing things. I like the way Blurple went to in set 8. And I had fun, but the game was getting a little bit stale for me or a little bit tiresome. So set 9 has been really explosive fun, and there's like decks that generally put a smile on my face when I get to play them. I think there's a lot of fear around Amber Steel, and it is incidentally like on the play, like probably one of the strongest decks we've seen in the game. On the draw, it feels it lacks quite a bit sometimes. It can win back. I mean, it still has like, because it has the steel package, it's pretty good on the draw as well. In some games, you know, if it can get the Lilo and Singing Strength off, Singing Strength is still just an amazing thing to be doing on the draw. But I don't know, it just feels like the game's like kind of deck diversity is a lot wider, and there's like loads of decks you can play. And it kind of feels, I don't know, quite a few people I've asked said about, like, you know, no matter what, they're playing lots of decks, and if none of them work, we'll just play Amber Still aggro Bologna or Milwaukee or whatever. So it's kind of in this weird testing phase where maybe people are ignoring this deck. To illustrate my point, sort of on the play, it just feels disastrously powerful if you can get multiple questers out very early on, like 2 questers. And on the draw, I think it's not as strong. Of course, like no deck is as strong on the draw, but it still has all the steel package to remove things. But it also has a big target on its back. But that's not what I'm going to talk about here. I've got the decks that I've been playing and enjoying the most right now in the set. And I've got 2 that I think are probably going to be my competitively viable decks. And then there's one that I'm just really enjoying, and I'm hoping it can be cast as a competitively viable deck. But out of the 3, we start with Blurple. Of course, I left set 8 really enjoying Blurple, and I was hoping I could just carry that joy over to set 9. And it's kind of feeling like I can. Like the last event I did for set 8 was a store championship, and we only dropped 1 game out of all of the best of 3s that we played in that day. So I was really happy with it. And it feels like we can still play the deck. It feels like a very tamed animal at this point, some sort of like, you know, tamed beast or something. It's not this draw power machine it used to be when it was back in the day, when it was just, you know, it never didn't have cards in hand, it never didn't have a thing it could do. And it's really impactful to see how much Porpskull affected Blurple. It just feels like without the ability to cycle through the cards, play a Tamatoa, you know, progress your board and draw 2 more cards, singing Friends whenever you can, all those little like just draw 2 cards or draw 1 card, like the deck doesn't fall apart. It's still very viable, but it feels like you want to sort of play this line of ramp and soften the blow of ramping, you know, by playing Sails, you know, to make sure you don't lose your hand size too much, into Genies, into like a Donald that wouldn't hit your hand size too much, and then later on in the game, if you need to and you get the moment to, you can play Finders Keepers. So we haven't changed this list around too much. I think the only thing maybe different from my first ever video on Blurple was Scrooge is in there. It could easily be a 4x, but I played with Scrooge quite a lot in Kiwi, and it was always a card that came in and out of the list. You know, it's like this very interesting thing of, he's a 5/5 that quests for 2, and he's just an insane body to put on the board after you ramp on 2. That's like kind of all the things that Blurple wants into aggro decks, but it just feels sometimes, you know, you've got a Genie and a Scrooge in hand, it can feel rough. But a lot of saying, like, if you just don't run the card, you just sort of lose the matchup. So he's got to stay in there. There's a lot of decks, like I think Purple Steel is one of them, where you can play a Scrooge down and pretty much just lock them out of playing the game for enough turns until it's dealt with. You know, it's just trading up so nice to everything. So I've put only a couple in there, and that could easily change to being a 4x if it seems that's the way everyone's doing it. But besides that, like, the list's very much the same. I think a lot of people were hoping they could put Rafiki's and Royal Guards in their list, but again, I think with the way Blurple's draw power is, you don't draw that much in set 9. Just every deck doesn't. Like, it's just how it is, except for one that I will mention at the end that just seems it's nuts on draw power. But with Blurple, it just doesn't feel like you draw very much. So it just, if you were to go into top deck mode with a ramp deck and you're top decking Rafiki into Royal Guard into Tipo, you're going to basically just kill your game plan later on in the game. So just keeping it at 4 Royal Guards, and if you miss it, you know, ramping into Genie, Scrooge, Belle, Elsa, all those cards should be enough for you to win those matchups anyway. And another card that feels weak in the deck is Hypnotic Strength. Besides for this card fitting the deck, that when you play it you get to draw a card, I rarely see any use for this. I don't really play it on Iagos, you know, because if you played Blurple in set 8, you didn't play Hypnotic Strength on Iagos, you just did Iago plus Elsa win the evasion war. So it's just all round strange for me that we've like 4x'd it, but it feels like really the card choices have dropped a bit, and a thing that says to Challenger +2 and you get to draw a card. You know, you can do some interesting things with the Royal Guard when you can buff them up to a 5 strength and take out rhinos. That's kind of cool, but it's just the way Blurple is. Like a 2-cost thing like that just never feels great. The only real 2 costs that we can really afford in the deck are the ramp cards, and they're locked into being played on turn 2, and then later on if you need some ramp you can. So yeah, it just feels kind of a strange card to put in there, and I kind of want to cut, but maybe after seeing other people cut cards, I'd maybe test around with that being something else. Maybe some more bodies on the board just to progress, just to fight these aggro decks, because as we say, no one's really getting any board wipes, anything like that, so everyone is in a position where they can just flood the board with whatever bodies they want. So maybe we should look at just putting more bodies in the deck. But that's kind of a weird tangent on me trying to explain why I don't like Hypnotic Strength and I think it should be something else. Right now it draws you a card and it has Challenger, but that's kind of a card I don't really like, and I could see it changing. Into the Unknown as well has felt like this necessary terrible. I'm not going to call it terrible, but I don't really like it. Half the times where you have an option to use it, you prefer to use Hades anyway, and then the other half the times the character that you want it Into the Unknown isn't even exerted, so you can't use it. So for me, overall, the card just feels kind of lackluster. But again, there isn't a huge amount, like tons of choices that we can put in Blurple. A lot are looking at like the 8-cost Elsa from set 1 that is being reprinted, that everyone loves. That I know a lot of old school Blurple players love that card. One of the reasons why I never played Blurple is I don't like that card, so I feel like if that card was ever put into the list like quite commonly, maybe I'd look at playing a different deck, because I just really don't like it. I don't like the freeze factor. I can understand why it's played, you know, if you're getting to the later stages of your game, Hades just won't be enough. You know, if they're just playing 2 daisies or a daisy and a penny, you might need Elsa to exert and freeze them, give you a moment. But for me, I don't like that freeze gameplay. And if you freeze them, you have to remove them that turn. Otherwise, if they play 2 more, it's going to be a weaker board, because now they've got 4 wide. So there's kind of the options you have there. And yeah, it feels like a lot of the cards are there just to fill the room. The Tamatoa, Friends, all those cards being removed kind of made with Blurple. But the core of the deck is still insane of ramping on 2, playing the genies early. Like right now, purple is just the strongest color, I think. Purple and steel are probably the strongest color, if that's a hint on what one of my lists will be today. Because purple is just in really good value cards like Genie to draw the cards. You know, Belle is very good, Elsa's very good. Even a card like Finest Keepers just off the bat is not amazing. The way it reads isn't amazing, but it's just draw 3 cards is not a bad thing, I think. So yeah, and then Into Steel was like the best removal on the draw kind of color that you could pick for the game. So those two together are great. So it feels like I have to be playing purple. If not, I have to be thinking about purple, and mainly that's due to Genie being such a valuable card. But yeah, you still that from that tangent, you get to see that Blurple is still the same. You know, the majority of these cards are from set 8 included in there, and doing those lines is still really fun. I still like running Genie into like a Calhoun or whatever and moving the 3 damage over to something else like a Rhino and removing that. You know, there's loads of fun that you can still have with it. So it's a really strong deck. I still like it. There's cards in there I've kind of not really enjoyed playing, like Hypnotic Strength. So maybe more the Blurple masterminds can think of things. I saw some of the lists over the weekend that people were testing with had like the Rush Rafiki that's a 1/4. That's kind of interesting to sort of have a body like that on the board when Calhoun can just easily clear them up, and you're going to be facing a lot of Calhouns, I'd imagine. So yeah, it's fairly interesting in that factor, but it's still more to test, still more to try out. But really, I haven't advanced my Blurple list too much. I'm just sort of playing the good old way it's been, and using the same cards. So the next list, because otherwise I'm going to keep waffling about Blurple, and it sort of sounded like the end I was disgruntled by the deck, which I'm not. I'm having a lot of fun with it, but there are some cards in there that feel like they're not pulling their own. But we go on to an ally-based Sapphire Steel list, and this is the deck that I just really enjoy playing. I just have lots and lots of fun with it mainly. I can see its competitive like viability. I think there is still in there. There are cards in here where when they work, they feel utterly like on a different power level. Mainly Jasmine, if you can shift her on 2, she feels like she's on a different power level. And then being able to put, bigger top end, where in Blurple, their top end is Hades, of course, but the other option is usually Elsa, and they don't really have many other things besides that. Like I've seen some Ratigans and stuff, but well, of course with Sapphire Steel, you get to add in the steel options at the top as well. And Tinkerbell has always been like the classic great one. It's a bit of a shame that I don't know. I don't know if she's been power crept, but there is just so many like 5/5 bodies. I mean, it's not really a power creep because she was in the same set that John Silver was in, but him being a 5/5 and her being a 4/5 just kind of hurts. And even the Scrooge being a 5/5 and the uninkable Scrooge being a 5/5 and her being a 4/5, it just feels like, and then you get a Clarabelle, and like I know she only costs 6 and Clarabelle costs more and whatever, but it just feels like 4/5 is a kind of a strange stat line when you get to their later stages. You're hoping to play against a deck that isn't throwing big bodies on the board like Amber Steel or Purple Steel. But when you go into the top end with like green, blue, and Ruby Amethyst as well, still around here and there. And Blurple is like Tinkerbell doesn't really do too much. Like it's great into a Bell. That's a 5 cost though. So the 5 cost Mystic Bell, it kind of feels weird, but she's an old classic. She's never really a bad thing to ramp into as well. And she only costs 6, so she's a little bit cheaper than the other 2 options, which is Hades and Vincenzo Settori. I don't know, I'm not going to pronounce that one, but this 7 cost one right here is a 2/8 that deals 3 damage on playing quest for 3. He just feels very strong right now, knowing that the board's pretty much never going to get wiped. There's no Brawl, there's no Sisu, there's no real answer for him besides do 8 damage to him. You can be under the seed, I guess. He can be bounced back to your hand by some things, I guess, but overall he's probably going to jump on the board and stick. And I just really like it because, 3 damage is usually enough to pressure and remove something, especially if you're throwing Tinkerbells down. Like you'll do your 1 damage to your Genie, then you'll remove it with the Vincenzo. So he just feels great. And then once he's done that, he's going to turn sideways in quest for 3 every turn, and he has 8 health. And besides that, he's not going to fight your opponent's board too much. 2 is not really an impressive number to do much damage, but if not, 3 is a lot of lore. So most opponents end up having to put the work in to get him off the board. So yeah, he seems like an awesome card to have at the top end. And on top of that, I used to have Bernard in this list, and the change is that I put Hades in. And pretty much whenever you go to the top end with all the other Sapphire decks, if they play 2 Hades in a row, they kind of just win the game. He's just a nuts card in a format where, we're so resource stricken. If you give your opponent extra ink, it's not likely that they have many other options to do it with. It's not like they're just going to double spell spam you because the extra ink doesn't do too much for them. So he's just probably like one of the best removal options in the game right now. He's one of the best top end bosses in the game. He just so strong. I kind of want to put him at 4, but I was testing it 2 and it felt fine. Because another bonus that you can do with the Sapphire Steel ally deck is that Jasmine is able to farm your hand up so much that you have like a bunch of things to play on the board every turn anyway. So if your opponent Hades you might be able to use the value on that. But yeah, you can sort of, when you're ramping up, you can just be questing every turn with Jasmine, taking another ally and throwing it on the board, or keeping the hand size bigger. So when the later point, you can just throw bodies on the board. Or you might be, as you're ramping, take advantage of things like Pleakley and Pleakley away some of your 1-drops, or things that are turned sideways. Maybe a Genie has got 2 damage on it and he's down for the count, and you just want to ramp and put the Genie in the Inkwell, because you're like, if not, they just trade in and take it off the board. So what the powerful thing is here, also, I'm just going to mention this Jafar. We're not running Jafar, this is a Lilo. Just the card that I replaced it with was Jafar, but that is Lilo from the new set. For anyone who's watching, the most powerful thing from this is, yes, if you can get Jasmine shifted on turn 2, every turn onwards, it's very hard for someone to do 5 damage unless they've gone hook into Calhoun. And at that point, you might have a fire the cannon just to get the hook off the board anyway. When you're ramping up, and every turn you basically get, Jasmine will draw you a card, and then you draw your card yourself for turn, or whatever, or vice versa. Of course, you draw the card for turn first, then you draw one for Jasmine. And what's amazing about that is you're just every turn you're getting 2 cards in hand, and you just get so much value from it. And one of those cards likely could be a dock. You could play the dock and draw even more cards, and it just feels like an absolute value machine. And then you can do some interesting things where, you know, use the Jasmine 1-drops to give resist to the Jasmine, or you can play Bagheera's out so you can protect the Jasmine, or you can use your Tinkerbell, your Strengths, your Hades, your all those cards to add more pressure and just protect it. And it gets to this game of every turn Jasmine gets you a lore and a card draw. And your opponent will probably put most of their work into trying to remove the Jasmine, because I think they just lose off value if they don't take it off the board. There is a chance you can miss off Jasmine, of course. Like, you've got Calhoun, Hook, and adding in the Hades was a bit rough, and Fire. There is about 28, I think, allies in the deck, so there's a chance you miss, and that does feel like a bit of a tempo loss. But you sometimes just the next turn that she quests and you get your card, you pick up the tempo again. And there's always things like if you miss off the 3 cards, that gives you 3 cards closer to finding a dock, which is great because dock gives you 2 card draw, and you can just win off this sheer value game. And that's what's really fun about her and about the deck in general. The only thing that sort of rough if you don't get that, and the fallback sometimes is to go 1-drop. Maybe you've only got the 4-drop in hand, but you don't have the 1-drop. You might play something on 1, or pass on 1, ramp on 2 with Tipo, and then play her on 4. She might get to work. That might not be too bad. You know, shifting is really good because you get to use her from turn 2 onwards. But hard playing on 4 is not the worst either. If you miss her completely, the deck sometimes doesn't feel great, and sometimes all I want to do with that game plan is, right, I'm just not feeling like I'm going to win off value here, so I just dump the hand with T-Pose and Pleakleys and get to a higher ink level and play off the top, and that doesn't feel very competitively viable sometimes, so the deck sometimes just doesn't function if you don't find Jasmine. But when you do, all those games have felt like an absolute steamroll, and, you know, just really winning off insane card draw and putting these, even things like the genie that the 3-cost genie that has evasion on your turn didn't feel powerful in previous sets. Now it feels pretty good to play, I'm not gonna lie. You know, getting that 1 damage from Tinkerbell is not too hard, or fire the cannons to make it so you can take out the genie, the purple genie, sorry, is great as well. And on top of that, you'll have some what is it called? You'll have the Lilo, the new Lilo, that can buff the genie and make him a 5/4, and it will just do it on that turn. So they might even fear turning their genie sideways because you'll just take the trade. And it's just a lot of fun to play. I really keep pushing it. I think it's the deck I've been playing the most because I really want to see it evolve into something that I could really put the stamp on and say this is competitively viable. But we're still early on. We're still having fun with the set. At least I am. This is the deck that's put the biggest smile on my face in a long time for Lorcana. So it's definitely got a place in my heart and I'm enjoying it. It's just an ally deck. I've just called it, oh my god, ally, because there's a TikTok meme or something about that years ago. And it's the last deck, the deck that I've think feels one of the strongest, and every time I've played against it in sims we don't talk about and testing environments, it's one that I really find quite a bit of powerful machine, and you have to get the real flow of it, I think, before it works. But it just feels like constant card draw or constant card cycle into pressure, and because everything's so cheap, you don't need to be achieving high inks. You can sometimes just stop at 4 and say I'll brick on Elsa if I draw Elsa, but everything else I'm just going to play, and it's just non-stop. I've got it at 69 inkables. I think I'm just before the video I was trying to look to drop it down to about 12, maybe 14, maybe try 14 first at 12. It probably doesn't need 4 or 5 of the cannons, so those could be swapped out for something. But so anyone in the comments who says 69 inkables is too much, I am trying to fix that. I just like to start with 4x lists out because Ed is great, and Ed said that's correct, and I trust Ed. So yeah, I try to do 4x everything when I start testing, and this is 4x of the new Lilo, not the old one from whatever set that is. And the list just feels consistently putting pressure on the board. Things like Diablo kind of work a bit better because you've got things like Jafar and Lilo to buff it and remove it, and you could make these really fun trades. 2 strength is not great, but it's whatever it is, and even if they remove it, it just cycles the card draw. And on top of that, trying Cusco in there as well, getting to have Burn back in the deck with Giant Cobra and the White Rose, Genie replacing itself, and the Piece de Resistance, or one of the best things in the deck. The best thing that most people look at in the list is Yzma, and she also has the ability to draw 3 cards. I've had games where you can dump the hand, play Yzma, you get Yzma's effect off, find a dock, and then draw 2, and you're like, I've drawn 5 cards for the cost of 2 ink right now, and that is pretty incredible, especially in set 9. In set 9 doing that is incredible to draw that many cards, and you've probably put loads of stuff on the board and just gone wide, and it doesn't really matter too much what those things are because you're just going to outvalue at this point. So it's just utterly huge. I think Yzma's great. I wouldn't say a trap, but sometimes it's just you might go in on trying to get her set up, trying to get her to work, but she's just not going to work for you. Um, Sometimes you might end up, she's this. That's complete mumbling on my words there, but I'm going to say it like this. Then I'm going to say it a bit better. She's really, really great, and she's going to be the thing that wins you the game, or she's just going to be useless and no point in the deck and just turn into ink. If you're behind, it's kind of hard to use them as value. You might use her as a way to get back into the game, but really on the board, you've just put a 3/3 that's going to get run down by whatever. It's interesting. You might think that people are going to remove it. There's a lot of removal in the game. There isn't that much removal in the game anymore, and usually by 4 ink, your opponent might have already used their strength to get rid of your Calhoun or your 3-drop or whatever to progress their win. So it's likely that she's going to stick and do her thing. It's just if you're on the draw, it might not be the right choice because you've already you're letting them get another turn of questing whilst you're trying to refill your hand. On the play, it just feels incredible sometimes. And sometimes you might just draw later on in the game when, anything else would have been better, like a Lawrence or a Bell or something. But besides that, she feels very strong in the deck. And it's a card that's really kind of excited me, and it seemed very competitively viable. The card that really is, in my opinion, like the best card in the deck is Palace Guard. So like Yzma's the one I think most people would say it is, but Palace Guard is really just incredible. Without Let the Storm Rage on, this card just feels so strong. It's basically just another Daisy. It's Daisy, but let's make it purple, really. It's a 1/4. And by the time you just play it on the board and it'll just sit there questing, and then later on in the game it'll just add a little bit of maths for you, like maybe you need to take out a Daisy or something that has 4 health and you can add this plus a Calhoun to remove it. It's unlikely they're going to invest any removal into it, and the only removal that would actually ever be sort of deemed good removal into it is Fire the Cannons. And at that point, do you really care that they played Fire the Cannons on your Palace Guard? You don't really care about that. If they played Strength on it, you'd be like, that's value for me because it costs you a 3 cost, and anything above that action level, a 2 or above ink investment to remove this is kind of rough. In set 8, of course, the reason why you wouldn't play it is if they let the Storm Raged on it. And that felt really bad because they get to draw a card and they removed your 1-drop. But because Fire the Cannons is quite neutral, both things are removed from the board, it just feels great. The card feels amazing. Every time I've play tested against it, it's sort of really impressed me. And it's just this 1/4, basically almost vanilla card that has Illusion on it. And then later on in the game, you just get so much reach with the deck as well because of Giant Cobra and White Rose. Love all of that. And the Giant Cobra is kind of just like a Lawrence body. If you're going to have to take out a Tiana, that's great. You do risk the chance of them playing Fire the Cannons or Strength on it, which doesn't, Fire the Cannons on Giant Cobra feels like bad for you, and if they finish saying Strength on it, it feels like that's kind of just neutral. But yeah, this has just been fun as well. Just this huge, I'm going to play a much more value tempo based game than you, even putting the set 2 Kuzco back in there. But these are the decks that are sort of all have impressed me so far in the game. Set 9 Blurple, Sapphire Steel, Allies, and Set 9 Purple Steel. All those 3 decks have impressed me the most. There is loads out there. There's loads of fun to be had. Like Green Steel looks really fun. I like using all of the power line cards. And RP seems to be having, I don't know, that like all the RP players want to keep playing that color combo, and I'm pretty sure they will, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be really good. Ruby Sapphire players trying to find a new home, and a lot of them seem to be going to green blue because that could be the new obnoxious control deck. But yeah, I'm having quite a fun time with it. These are the 3 that are really I'm kind of like tunneling in on the decks that I'd like to play, but loads out there, and that's just an update on my lists.